Are there story keepers alive today?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely, there are. Most people on the outside of the reservations or the people, you're not going to find them. But it's just like with the medicine men and the holy men of the tribes. Our people know who they are. And I mean, you can imagine, these people that are found and they get inundated, but their whole sole purpose is to keep these stories alive for their tribes. So yes, there are many who still.
That's incredible. Let's get into the book a little bit. What is one of, and we've, we're already the window of time is shrinking very rapidly, but tell us one of your favorite stories in the book.
One of my favorite stories was shared with me by a Lakota man, and he was a dear friend of mine, also a military veteran. And we were sitting around the fire one time, and we were talking about things. And he wasn't a believer at the time. He was raised very traditional, in the traditional ways of the Lakota people. And his grandfather was a very well-known Lakota medicine man. And as I was sharing things with him, and we were talking about these stories, and he says, "Well, I want to share a story with you." And this story was passed down to him by his grandfather, who was passed down to him by his grandfather. And again, I'm paraphrasing the story. So in the story, in the long ago time, there was a plague and a famine that hit the Lakota people. And this is when they were still more on the East Coast. Because the Lakota, if you've ever watched Dances with Wolves, that's the Lakota. And he gave me the permission to tell the story. They used to be East Coast people before they became buffalo hunters and pushed out west. And there was a time where there was a great sickness that came upon the people. So as is custom of a chief, you would go and you would fast and pray for an answer. So this chief would go up to a sacred mountain and fasting and praying would cry out to Creator, Tankashila, maker of all things, creator of the heavens and earth, my people are dying. Is there a song that you can give me that I can sing over my people so that they'll be healed? And he received no answer. So the next day the chief is praying and singing. And again, Tankashila, you who made all things, you created us from the dust of the earth. My people are dying. Is there a plant that you've created that I can make into a medicine for my people? And he received no answer. The third day, again, he's praying and he's crying out, Tankashila, you are the maker of all things, the creator of the universe. You who set the stars in place and the moon and the sun. My people are dying. Is there a dance that you can give me a vision of that I can dance in warfare for my people so that they'll be healed? And there was no answer. So that fourth day, the chief is praying and he's empowered as he's been fasting and he's crying out one more time, please, Creator, is there something? My people are dying. And as he's crying out, the Creator sent a spirit messenger to this chief. And the spirit messenger opened a window in the sky and he told the chief, look through this window for your answer. And so the chief looked through the window in the sky and he saw a man that was pierced and hanging on a tree. And the spirit being said, he is dying, so your people will live. And as the window began to close, the chief said, wait, what is his name? So that we can honor him with a dance and remember that he has given his life so we can live. Because amongst our people, there's no greater honor than to give your life for another. And the spirit being said, his name is Bright Morning Star. Remember his name.
Wow.
And that's what the old ones say. That's how it was passed down. And that is the origin of the Sundance. And I sit there and I was listening to this story just stunned.
Absolutely.
As a traditional medicine man is sharing this with me, a story about Jesus, about Yeshua. That very clearly, and of course, Bright Morning Star, that sounds like an Indian name. God shows himself to you in a way that you'll understand. And some people may take issue with the spirit being. But what does Hebrew 13 say? Yeah. Angels are ministering spirits.
That's right.
Sent to the heirs of salvation.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating story. And folks, I just want to, Joseph, you are a born-again, spirit-filled Christian, a pastor, and I just want to make that really clear, that what we're doing here is we're kind of bridging back into who Jesus really is. Jesus is not the God of the white man. He's the God of all men. And it's important that we realize that. We're getting, close to the end, so I want to get into this. We didn't cover this, you didn't cover this in the book, but this is an artifact, and we have come to call this the Nephilim lance. The Nephilim lance. Now, we're not saying that this is a replica of it, by the way, but this is exactly what it looked like. And when we were first presented to it, the owner of the artifact laid it on a table, and Chief Joseph and I were there looking at it, and I immediately picked it up and thought it was a sword, and I'm going, well, this is really heavy, very difficult to wield as a sword. It weighs about 8.5 pounds. And you looked at us and you said, guys, no, you're looking at it through your cultural lens. Tell us what happened next.
Well, immediately when I saw this, I thought of the oral tradition of the giants. And in the stories of the giants, they would have these war lances. And the old ones say that these war lances, this would have sat on an 8, maybe even a 10-foot wooden shaft that this was attached to.
Wow.
And they would easily, these giants in battle would skewer 2 to 3 warriors at one time. And I mean, you can see just the sheer size of this, that would take place. Also, as everybody was thinking, oh, well, this is a sword, First Nations people, very few worked metal. And when the metal was worked, it was, copper, and it was used for ornaments, earrings,
And this is a bronze artifact.
This is a bronze artifact. Right. To my knowledge, I don't know of any First Nations tribes that worked bronze, especially to this shape or manner.
And what's interesting here, folks, is that this artifact was found at an abandoned campsite in the wilds of Michigan. And the owner of it saw it laying on the ground, and he picked it up and basically backpacked it out of there. We have had that tested, and it's very inconclusive of testing. I've written about it. But what's amazing, when you saw it, immediately it goes back and gives validation to the Native American oral tradition. And of course, we find that fascinating. There's another little interesting idea with this particular artifact, and it's as a weight of 8.5 pounds. In the biblical prophetic narrative, it talks about the weight of Ishbi-Benob's spearhead, I think is like 600 shekels. And when you take the shekels and you convert it, it comes down to around 8.5 pounds. So we find that, absolutely fascinating. And look, is it a Nephilim artifact? We don't know. It's still very inconclusive, but once again, it points back to the veracity of the biblical prophetic narrative, which we find that incredibly interesting. What are your closing thoughts here, Chief Joseph? We're down towards the end here. So what's your, just leave us with what's the takeaway basically on that's what the old ones say?
The takeaway is the stories that I've put in the book that I was given permission to share, with the understanding, the permission that I was given was, and this was across the board. All these elders said the fires are coming, the time is short, the people need to know these stories. And I understand from a First Nations perspective, and I know you do as well, why things and this type of knowledge has been so closely guarded by Native Americans, because we've lost so much. But the intensity of what's happening in the earth today, with the earthquakes and the fires and all these elements that are taking place prophetically, we know that people need to be warned. And even the traditionalists, and I have found many of these traditional medicine people are believers. But they would be ostracized by their people.
Sure.
If they said that. But in order to really be traditional, they have to believe the old stories that were passed down from their tribes. But I believe that as First Nations, we have a mandate. And I'm not just talking about Billy Graham's prophecy, but we have a mandate to be the ones that call for forgiveness and reconciliation, because time is short. And our Messiah is coming through soon. The chief cornerstone, Yeshua, is coming. And we need to get past all these divisions, all this junk that's getting in the way of us really being a unified body. Jesus, Yeshua, is not going to come back for a dismembered bride. And I believe as First Nations people, as a healed people, through forgiveness, through reconciliation of what's taken place, that we truly can bring the sacred fire, is what we call. We're one small voice in the wilderness, but we were also the last people to be evangelized, the indigenous people of the Americas.
Wow.
And so we have that mandate to take the gospel back to the people that brought the gospel to us and say, look, we're a healed people, and we're a reconciled people, we're a redeemed people. We must do this. And we're seeing that happen. We're seeing this revival that took place